Hey, 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 and welcome to this podcast, Sarah. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with you because I believe you have got a big message to give the world. So thank you for joining me on Terry Messenger's Genius Zone.
No, thanks for having me. It's great to be here today.
That is so good. And I'm so glad that you are here because we are talking about, quite a huge topic. And the topic is really around women's social conditioning of, what they think they are, what they think they're supposed to be, and how they see themselves. And how many women do you know that are really not living their life to their absolute fullest capacity? Can you relate to that?
Yeah, certainly. I think we're sort of brought up believing we've got to do certain things and be certain people as women. And we try and fulfill other people's expectations and not always what we want, and sort of get stuck in this box but don't really fit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting about being stuck in that box because, how many people are out there suffering and playing their lives down and feeling really, lackluster. And I mean, that's got to be exhausting. Now, you've got like practically, you have got a degree in this topic, right? But you've gone ahead and you've been studying all about sociology and the conditioning of, the different cultures. And you understand very well about the role of women. And I guess, really, is there a role, even when you sort of talk about what role? Are you a mother that is looking after the kids? Are you a career woman? It all seems like it is very boxed, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like it's quite prescriptive. It's like, why do we have to have these roles assigned to us? Why can't we just live as we want to live and do what we want to do? Um, yeah. So
Yeah,
it can be.
yeah. And I mean, you must have had a bit of an undergirding passion in you when you went and studied. And the fact that it took your interest, and you've had a very, very interesting journey because from where you've been and everything that you've studied and the degrees and the just the mastery of what you know about coaching and really how to explore the woman that wants to be all that she deserves to be. And it's more than just about who they are in their career or in their family,
Mm.
isn't it? Like it's about how they look, how they feel about their body, and all of those things. Do you think that there was a bit of an impact with yourself around, what was supposed to be right and wrong and which box we were
Mm.
supposed to be in by the experience that you had at the age of 8?
Yes, definitely. So I was put on my first diet at age 8, and immediately that
Wow.
gave the message that I wasn't good enough as I was. I can remember there was part of me who was thinking, oh, I'm grown up now because I'm on a diet, which obviously goes to show how great diet culture is. Um, so yeah, but definitely sort of that feeling of not being good enough as how I was crept in there.
Mm,
That perpetuated. I was on the diet roller coaster life for over 30 years, and
wow.
it just, there was self-loathing, very low self-esteem. The way I used to speak to myself in the mirror was horrendous. And yeah, you wouldn't things I wouldn't have said to my worst enemy at the time. Um, and then suddenly a realization that actually this is not okay. This is not how I want to live the rest of my life. It wasn't the message I wanted to pass on to my daughters and my son. Um, I wanted them to love themselves as they were and appreciate themselves for who they were. And that was really the start of my journey.
What do you think prompted your people to actually go ahead and put you on a diet? Like, was there any kind of concept around that?
I've never had the conversation as to why, and unfortunately, my mum has died, so I can't have it now. But I've done a lot of healing on that. That they were working from their best intentions and what they knew at the time, and there was probably some comment made, and that I was slightly overweight as a child. But I also hit puberty quite early, and I do believe that if I'd just been left alone, it would have all evened itself out. But they were coming from their best intentions and not intending to create the hurt and the feelings that did come along.
Of course, absolutely. And, it is so good that you have got that mindset, because there are a lot of people out there that for example, I was actually dealing with a client not so long ago, it was this year, and she was a nurse. She was very highly educated. And when I actually got to know her, I discovered that she had a world of pain, and it all came from her history and what was sort of imprinted into her life and in her belief system,
Mm,
that really put her into a position where she formed a lot of soul contracts that were really nasty with
mm,
her father. But see, her father had died, and she hadn't made peace with that.
mm,
And I always say to people, you know everybody's always coming from the highest intention,
yeah.
right? So even like with her father, with some of the things that she put up with him, and it was obviously a completely different situation. Your parents are coming from the best interest of what they believe.
Mm,
But what what was it that created you to decide that that was something you had to make peace with? And can you tell us how you were able to actually release it and let it go? Like, what were some of the stories that you had to change so that you could, I guess, release from your mum? I'm going to give you an example before you answer. But this lady, I mean, she was so rampantly, like, not like yourself. You obviously had a good relationship with your parents, and you
mm,
obviously, knew that they were coming from the best intention. This girl didn't. She had no concept about that. So she had so much bitterness in her. And you and I both know as coaches that the body never lies. It
mm,
kind of sits in the body. And yourself, we're going to talk about it in a little while, about how we will sabotage ourselves,
mm,
whether that's through food, when we in times of struggle. But what it was for her that gave her that big turnaround was when I was doing a timeline therapy with her, and we
mm,
were actually face to face. And I asked her to stand up and draw out her timeline. And so when we walked back and we kind of mapped out where it was, when she was
mm.
7, 8 years old, because that is really a very pivotal age,
Yeah.
right? As you would know. And what we discovered is she had to go back to before she was born,
Wow.
and she had to go back to her father when he was a child.
Wow.
Now, what had happened was she was able to go back in the wisdom of her age now,
Mm,
a young woman, and actually hold her father as a little boy.
wow.
And she was able to have the insight right there to know that he wasn't able to give her what he didn't have.
Mm,
He wasn't a deliberate asshole.
yeah.
It was that, and that was for her that let go of, oh, that you can imagine
Yeah.
a whole
A
world of
lot.
things
Yeah.
unravel.
Yeah.
You know, what would you say to the woman that is perhaps really battling with their own mind and maybe with some of the stuff that they learnt growing up? Would you have any special, you know, tips and, you know, ideas that you can give that woman or even that man that's listening of how they can just turn that, turn the tide and change their mindset?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose for me, I think one of my big realizations was I was a mum of 3, and it was suddenly I can't remember if I'd messed up with one of the kids, said something I shouldn't have done or something like that, but then thinking I'm doing my best, and then it was suddenly like, and that's what your mum did too.
Ah,
And
oh,
it
wow.
was like, wow, yeah. And it was this sudden
Revelation.
realization that she was operating from the beliefs and the conditioning she had had, and that we can change it, but that's where she was coming from, and so that's why she'd like put me on the diet and everything else that I've been brought up with around diet culture and food. And then for me, it wasn't around that, but I can remember thinking, wow, well, if I'm doing my best and that's all I can do, I can be open to, you know, changing and receiving feedback, but you can only do your best. Then that's what she was doing too.
Wow.
It
Had
was,
you made peace with your mum before she passed, or was it after she passed that you made peace?
we'd never, we still had a very good relationship. There was one area we never talked about, which was food and diets. I remember after having my second baby, I think it was, and she'd come up to help and everything. And as she left, she said something about, oh, I think you should cut down on the carbs. And I just said, just leave it. I said, I just can't anymore. I've had enough. Just leave it. And we never talked about weight again until, funnily enough, the week she died. And her death was very unexpected.
Wow.
And I'd gone shopping for a wedding outfit for my nephew who's getting married, and was really excited because I'd found a really lovely dress and I felt great in it, and I actually rang her up and told her. And it was the first time that we'd ever made any mention of body or anything like that since I'd said leave it. So there was a sort of peace around that whole area. But yeah, so our relationship was still very good, even though there was this one area we didn't talk about. But my peace and release of an acknowledgement that she was operating from what she knew
Mm,
came after.
yeah.
Um,
And really, it was just your mum's belief, wasn't it, from
mm,
something of her own childhood when you do actually think about it. And I mean, obviously, there was a lot of self-healing, and also there was a couple of things that happened throughout your life. And this is what I always say, like, you know, when I'm interviewing coaches, healers, leaders on this show, you know, the best of them, like Oprah Winfrey, they came from their own personal experience.
yeah.
And that just gives that incredible experience and understanding. And then you put someone into, you know, a position where they get to come into your space where you've got so much talent, so many gifts, and so much intellect around this topic, and that just makes for, you know, just a beautiful mentorship. But you had a couple of things happen for you, because obviously there was that element of where you went into a situation where you had another element of a big drama that had happened in your family, and you kind of found yourself going backwards again in that area of food. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah. So sort of late 30s, early 40s, and I'd decided I was no more diets, I wasn't going down that route anymore. Finally had that realization, thankfully. And
Mm,
I decided I wanted to be fitter and healthier, and just, you know, feel better in my body. So I started working personal trainer, and a byproduct of that was that I lost quite a lot of weight. But more than that, my whole mindset shifted around myself, my body, my self-worth, my self-esteem. And then in sort of 2018, 29, there was 2019. We went through a bit of a time as a family where there was some trauma going on with one of our children, and I didn't have the space and the wherewithal to support my emotions because I was supporting their emotions, so I ate mine. So the old habit of eating my emotions came back in. So a lot of
Yeah.
weight did go back on. We then entered, obviously, the lockdowns and pandemic and all that. But what didn't change, and this is where I knew that the work I'd done on myself and the self-healing had worked and transformed, was my mindset about myself didn't change. I didn't stop loving myself. The self-hate talk didn't come back. I still knew I was valuable. I still knew my self-worth. And so that was really encouraging, even though obviously ideally might not have put on the weight again. But how I felt about myself just did not change. And so that was a real sort of breakthrough moment.
That is incredible, and I feel like we're ever evolving.
Yeah.
And when we are called into this work, because it's very privileged work,
Mm,
I consider myself extremely privileged
yeah.
to be helping people, because it's legacy work. When you're helping someone deeply, especially with what you do, which we're going to go through, that whole unleashing of a woman's confidence. And if you're a man, that's okay. I work with both men and women, but this is definitely something. Let's face it, men and women the same. We all have these issues, whether it may be around alcohol, but we all really have a vice that we tend to go back to. And I almost feel like it's part of our evolving.
Yeah.
Like you made that stand with yourself where you would never go back to that shocking self-talk,
Mm,
and the way that you used to terrorize yourself in the mirror even. And I mean, here's all these coaches saying, look at yourself in the mirror and tell
yeah.
yourself, all these wonderful things. But really, you've got to be congruent about it. And
Mm.
so what do you reckon turned that whole switch for you, where you were able to really shift, the way you saw yourself, so that even when you went through that next big drama, you didn't actually go back, or you never went back to where you were?
No.
Yeah, the food thing got you, but we'll get to that in a moment. But what do you think changed in your life that really cemented in that you are who you are, and you wouldn't go back to that old version?
Yeah. So there was a lot of work I did on growing to love myself and my self-value. And one of the big realizations I had, which might sound obvious to lots of people, was, well, hang on a minute. My husband loves me. My kids love me. Why can't I love me? And it's like, if they love me, but I can't love me, am I saying they're stupid? I'm sort of
Oh,
by not loving
that's a
myself, I'm
good
rejecting
reframe.
their love in a way, because it's not that, does it mean their love doesn't mean anything? And then
That's
there
a
was,
fabulous reframe. I'm going to steal that.
yeah, I do. It was a real like, yeah, well, if they can love me, why can't I love me? Or am I saying they're wrong to love me? And
Yeah, that is such a valid point, because really, it's what we say to ourselves is, oh gosh, it's treacherous, isn't it?
oh, it's
Some of the
awful.
things,
Yeah.
yeah, that we do say to ourselves. So this little 8-year-old girl, if we can just go back
Mm.
in time again for a moment to the 8-year-old girl, um, do you feel she had started developing bad habits with food at that age that sort of put her into the position? Or was your mum totally, was she delusional, and she saw you
Um,
differently?
that's a good question. I would say I wasn't the most active child. I was quite a sedentary child naturally. I wasn't one who ran around all over the place and did activity. So, but there were restrictions in place around food in the house as well.
Ah, right.
So I think
Do you
that
think that might have been it, Sarah? Because
I think it
aren't
might have contributed. Yeah.
yeah, because I've got a grandson, and we are like absolute partners in crime. Like we're just so we're soulmates. That's all I
Mm.
can say, right?
Oh,
But this kid, he's 3. Well, he's actually just turned 4. He's just had his 4th birthday. He runs into my kitchen, and the first thing he does is go straight to the pantry, and he
mm,
just wants to see everything. Now, because he has boundless energy and is definitely, affected by some foods,
yeah.
there's that element of wanting to kind of, how do you say, lead him
Mm,
in the right way without restraining, as you
yeah.
say. Like, you had kind of conditions, and there was obviously some mindset going on for your mum, and that could have been in 10 generations ago. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like, it could have been war times, or who knows what her great ancestors went through, and why food was, that's how it meant for her. It's a bit like poverty.
yeah,
Our poverty mindsets, they come from our ancestral lineage.
yeah.
And this is why it's so important. Like, even if it's not around food that a lot of people are concerned about, that you've got a vice. Every one of us does. And, the big $64 million question, and I know that you are an absolute, queen at this, but, on active listening
Yeah.
and the communication that you have learned. But what I knew and what I said to my husband is that, what if we were to put all these restraints around the food, and him being a very curious, healthy, and slightly rebellious boy,
Mhm.
because he's got a lot of his nanny and his nan dad in him as well.
Yeah,
And that's just a whole story in itself. But you put them into that position, it makes them want it
exactly.
more.
Yeah. And that's
So, yeah.
yeah, and that's totally what it was. It was like, you can have that if you eat your main course. You can only have 2 biscuits. There's like split, and it was always around the sweet stuff. And so that's what
Yeah,
you
rules.
wanted. Whereas I think if you offer, then children will try lots of different things, and they'll get sick of eating all the sweet stuff, because that's not what we want to feel great, is it? Um,
Yeah, that's right. And I'll tell you one thing that I did do with him, though, and that was that I picked him up and I put him on the breakfast bench, and I put my ear to his stomach, and I
mm,
went, let's listen. What's your tummy saying? What
oh,
is your tummy
brilliant.
asking for? And I wondered, like, you are really quite a linguistic, but how would you say, as a parent, we ought to be raising our children so they're not, because what happens as adults, that they
Mm,
grow up and they find themselves in that position where they go, well, what's my life all about now? I
yeah.
mean, what's the best thing we can encourage our kids? And what would we say to our younger self? Like, what would you say to your younger self if you could go back
I
and
could
have that
definitely.
time over again, and to actually reconstruct? Although I mean, I know that everything that's happened to us is for a great reason, and
Yes.
it's good, because that's why you're who you are today, right?
Yeah, that's
But,
right.
just bringing some wisdom, because obviously, the Confidence Unleashed, this is about one of your signature programs, right?
Mm,
So, when you're talking to that person that's coming through that program with Confidence Unleashed, what's the first thing they have to do?
learn to love and accept themselves where they are, and know that they are okay and good as they are as well. For me, self-love and self-acceptance is just key to so much of our lives, because without it, you don't feel really confident. You don't feel able to say yes to things that come your way. You're not going to back yourself to go after what you want unless you love and accept yourself. Because you're not going to feel you're worth it. And so it's just absolutely paramount that I say the relationship you have with the self is the most important relationship in your life. And so you should at
Mm,
least be treating yourself like somebody you love, if not more. um,
yeah.
it's, and that's the thing. It's just absolute paramount that, you've got to have a certainty in yourself that you're all right, you're valuable, you're worthy, and you deserve your dreams, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, without giving away everything, what do we really need to do? Like, do you have any specific exercises that you teach people so that they can, begin that self-love, like through affirmations or mantras
Yeah.
or, coaching and obviously the mentoring that you give?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things I get them to do is actually write down things they do love about themselves. And if they don't love them, they like them. And if they don't like them, they think they're okay. So aspects of themselves. And then if they're feeling really brave, and quite a few of them do this, is they ask the people in their lives that love them what they love about them. And we delve deep because it's often the things that we just do, or it's like, well, that's just who I am. But actually, that's what someone else can really love about us, and we don't even acknowledge it. So that's one thing I get
Mm,
them to do, to actually acknowledge what there is there to love already. And if they struggle with it, to get some feedback. So on my last round of this course, I had one lady, and when we did this exercise in week 1 or 2, and she wrote down nothing, and which was heartbreaking. By the
mm,
end of the course, she had a long list, and it was
wow.
just phenomenal to see the change in her and the change in her belief. But
Wow.
yeah, we use affirmations because that 95%, I think scientists say, our thoughts are just unconscious. And you sort of think, well, if we've got all these negative limiting thoughts or things we're saying to ourselves that we're not even aware of, what impact are they having? So if you can consciously say positive thoughts, positive affirmations about yourself, then they're going to have an impact over time.
Yeah.
And just change your state, change how you feel about yourself, your mindset, and just build yourself up. It's got to have an impact. If we're consciously making that decision to feed in positive, it's going to have an impact. There's no doubt. Well, it
Oh,
does. I know it does.
yeah. Thank you for that. I'm always looking for, some next level stuff for my journal.
Mm,
And, I really encourage people to do the 3 affirmations, like
yeah.
3 things you're grateful for every day. But I tell you what, I'm going to try that. I'm going to start writing down all the things
Mm,
that I like about me and that I perceive that other people like about me, and the things, because it's true. I've actually never done that. So,
yeah.
I mean, if one lady that you've had could not think of one thing, it
Mm,
almost reminds me of a time when I was consulting someone that just trauma ridden, right?
mm,
And when we were looking, because obviously we have to harness the power of positivity to
yeah.
kind of gazump and fill the space of what is going to be, obviously replacing the trauma.
Yeah.
She could not think, Sarah, of one happy moment in her life,
Wow.
just like your lady. And it took a long, long, long time, but it did happen. And
Yeah.
then soon as that floodgate opened,
Mm,
like, I mean, she was conceived as a result of rape. So
wow.
she was like, not even, she couldn't even say anything like when she was a baby. That's how
No.
bad it was. So basically, I said, well, what if you were at kindy and you were painting and you were just
Mm,
lost inside that moment? And all of a sudden, it just took her mind to a different place, and she
Yeah.
suddenly woke up and realized. But that's amazing. And then what's the next step? So obviously I know that the journey to actually self-love is part of your program,
Yeah.
and the next part I know is all around the certainty and getting, that clarity about, their life and who they become. What does a woman do? Because especially because you understand about all the social conditioning,
Mm.
you understand, maybe you can kind of set the mood by saying what happens typically in that woman's life, like what happened to you. You
Yeah.
get to a certain age and then you go, what now? And then perhaps talk us through how they can find that, I guess, that clarity and that certainty within.
Yeah, certainly. So for me, I got to a certain age, my kids got to a certain age, and it was, oh, what do I want now? What do I want to do? Where do I fit in all this? And which happens to a lot of women, I think, as the kids grow older and stuff. But it's finding out what you love, what lights you up, what you enjoy doing, what's fulfilling. But a lot of the time we don't even think about it. We're just stuck on this life loop, and we just keep going and going and going without even considering, do I enjoy what I'm doing? Is this what I want to be doing every day? Is this what fulfills me and makes my life exciting and worth living? Because life can be fine, but we want more than fine. It's fine
Yes.
is just, I always say fine should be talked about as in a fine thread or the weather's fine. It shouldn't be about your life. Our life should be
Yeah.
more than that. It should be fulfilling and exciting for us. It should bring us joy and just feel good. And that's not, of course, we all have our up and down days. And I never try and negate how people are feeling. But if we can not wallow and not sit there for a long time, then that's fantastic. And so, yeah, it's finding out with the women what they love doing, what their dreams are. When did they last actually think, what are my dreams? What do I want to achieve? What do I want to be doing? And for some, it can be, I want to create a lovely home for my family and grow the vegetables in the garden. For others, I want to go and climb a mountain. And it doesn't matter what it is. If it's your dream and your goal, that's what's important. It's not what anyone else thinks about it. And I think that's the other thing, is you gain your clarity, but then you need to grow the self-belief that that's what you want is fine. I shouldn't use that word fine. What you want is good, if that's what you want, not what anyone else wants. And so then it's getting in action, taking the first step. What's the first step I can take to be the person that does what I want to do?
Yeah, because you talk about giving yourself a permission slip,
Yes.
which I feel is very, very powerful. So, what is it about that permission slip in your program that, creates that more unstoppable woman, from the one that was self-doubting, not knowing where she was, to suddenly coming into her inner confidence and clarity, into giving herself permission and then
Mm.
becoming unstoppable. So what can you talk us around that? Like, what happens with that permission slip? Why is it such a crucial piece?
Because I think we live our lives, we're in our roles doing what we do, and it's feeling that we should be satisfied with what we're doing. Life's fine, as I said. But it's okay to want more. And just because you want more doesn't mean you don't love and appreciate what you've got, but you are allowed to want more. So say you're a mum and you've got young children and you love them dearly, but you still are allowed to want things for yourself too. I had someone on the last round who was struggling with that whole mum guilt thing of thinking, well, I shouldn't really need to do these things for me anymore because I've got my child. And I'm like, yeah, but you still love doing those, and that's still a part of who you are. And so it's knowing that that's okay. I'm allowed to want more. And actually, one thing I talked to her about was, what would you say to your daughter? Would you say to your daughter, well, once you get to a certain age, you're not allowed to want anymore? I said, no, you want her to live her life as big as possible and achieve all her dreams, don't you? She's like, yeah. And I said, so why doesn't the same apply for you? And it's quite often a good way to do it is, we'll talk to your children or talk to somebody. What would you say to them? because actually that applies to you and your life as well. So give yourself that permission to want more, to go after what you want. As I say, it doesn't always have to be big things. With her, it was things like carrying on with her creative writing, and it was feeling guilty for taking that time. But no, she loved it, and it made her life joyful. She found it exciting. So you are allowed to want that, as well as other aspects that we've got that we still love.
Yeah. I mean, I can see how your program of becoming that unstoppable woman, so to speak, or the unstoppable man
Yeah.
is, it doesn't matter, like what you say, they could be baking cookies at home and nurturing their family. And if that's what, absolutely flicks their switch,
Yeah.
so be it.
Yeah.
But as long as you are giving yourself permission to be all of everything
Yeah.
that that is inside of you, because life's so short,
It is. And
you
it's
know?
living the life that you want and that you dream of, not in a really selfish way, although I say some selfishness is good. Not what you think you should be doing. And that's what's so important. It's that it's for you and it's not for everyone else out there.
Anthony Robbins says, when you should, all that you're doing is shooting all over
Yeah.
yourself and shooting all over everybody else.
Yeah.
So ditch the should and start being,
Yeah,
and
totally.
and just stepping into that, obviously, I guess, coming out of the other side, obviously the woman that comes through your program, and what she's really experiencing is that fearless, limitless,
Yeah.
and I believe you called her warrior queen.
Yeah.
And and it's interesting, actually, how we don't actually mean it literally like warrior queen,
No.
but it's how the warrior queen kind of manifests within
Yeah.
you. So, what does a warrior queen mean to you, Sarah? And can you describe this woman that is now gone from the mediocre, squashed, living in a kind of a small world, not attaining, all the life of what she really wants and what she deserves to live, to stepping into this like
Mm,
fearless, limitless warrior queen? Like,
yeah.
what does that look like?
So the word that springs to mind is ignited, and it's like, so the love of themselves is ignited. They've just got a quiet certainty. It doesn't need to be really loud and brash unless that's their personality, which is great. But there's a quiet certainty, just a solidness that I'm good as I am. I can do what I want to do. There are no limits. And you said it, unstoppable. That they attract people because of their energy. They're energized. They just feel full of life and are just happy, which is a really like nondescript word, but just that quiet, solid contentment, but knowing there's a fire in them, that when they want to get somewhere, they can get somewhere and they can do what it is.
Because it's very sad to just get to the end of your life and sort of look back and think, oh wow, I just played it down and I just let that fire sort of go out. You want to be that,
Yeah.
because women, men alike, we are all really equal, right? I'm very much about
Mm,
equality. And we all have the right and we all have the power to be standing in our legacy and being a light to the world. We don't have to be coaches, healers, and leaders like you and I. It can mean standing in your power within your own right.
yeah.
So I'm just going to go to a short break as we discuss this program that you have that is consecutively running, and it is around unleashing your confidence through the journey of self love. So, guys, firstly, can I say, subscribe to this channel and share it with anyone that may really want to hear this. And if you are interested in jumping on board of this program, if you are ready to really fire up and step into your power and become that unstoppable person, and it doesn't matter where you are in your life, you know, what Sarah is doing right here is she's taking you literally and doing a complete mind flip, right? So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go through the journey of self-love. And Sarah is going to take you through this in the most incredible way. Now, as you come to nurture your own journey to self-love, the big thing and what Sarah is really gifted in doing is helping you. She's a great listener, she's an active listener, and that mind flip that helps you to understand that when you change your thoughts, you change your life. This is where you can step into harnessing your inner power, learning to say yes to your soul. This is one of her modules where you say yes to your soul because you're stepping into your certainty. You're stepping into your crystal clear clarity, and you're stepping into the person that you were called to be. So then she'll take you through becoming unstoppable, because I would dare say that once you've moved through these incredible, powerful modules, this is what it's going to feel like, even if you are baking cookies or if you are out on a machinery or riding a horse, whatever it is. When you're doing what you love and loving what you do, you will feel unstoppable. I know what it's like. I know what it's like to feel alive. I was going to say the hills come alive with the sound of music. That keeps coming because Mary Poppins is in town at the moment. But anyway, staying on track, you guys. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. Also, the link to join Sarah on her program is here. And once you become this unstoppable person, this is all about the fact that you've given yourself permission. And as Sarah says in her own words, if that means swinging through the jungle to give yourself that permission, so be it. And then stepping into your fearless, limitless warrior self. So thank you so much, Sarah. Is there any last words? What would you say to a person out there that's perhaps sitting on the fence? Maybe you know them better than I do because you know what it's like.
Mm.
Is there a short story, a quick snippet that you can share with this woman because you know you've been there yourself? And
Yeah.
you know what it's like. What would you say with last words here?
Well, if they're anything feeling like I was, it was, as I say, life was fine. A little bit bored, if I'm honest. And I got to the point of adopting the mantra, say yes, be brave, because I used to say no to absolutely everything. It was, do you want to do this? No. Do you want to do this? No. So I started saying yes to everything. And that did lead me to swinging through the jungle in Bali with my daughter, walking on the seabed with my daughter in Bali, going to events on my own that I wouldn't have ever done before, but loving them. The funniest one was when I said yes to a yoga event to support a coach I was working with at the time, not realizing it was hot yoga and thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I've actually loved it, thankfully. So many things I've done over the last few years. I went to the Maldives on a retreat. I've done all these things that I would never have done if I hadn't gone through the journey of learning to love myself. My life is richer. It's had ripple effects to my family because I'm a happier person. I'm a more excited person. So that affects our whole family life. I participate in things when we go on holidays. I used to hold the bags and take the photos, but now I'm in there with them. And so it can just completely enrich your life and the life of those you love. So just say yes to you.
I love that. That is a big, One, say yes to you.
Mm,
Because when you start saying yes to you, guess what? The world will start saying yes. So thank you
exactly.
so much for this beautiful conversation. And I know that this is just going to bless so many people who listen to it. And I send all of you so many blessings. And I thank you so much, Sarah, for joining
Thank you.
me on this podcast and sharing so many gold nuggets with us today.
No, thanks for having me. It's been lovely.